This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, and faith-focused feature stories with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
Contempt of Congress. Good afternoon. Welcome aboard. The Senate Homeland Security Committee voting today to hold Dr. Anthony Fauci in contempt of Congress. It comes a week after the pandemic point man invoked the Fifth Amendment and refused to answer questions about COVID-19.
There will be another pandemic. This committee and the American people have a right to know why Dr. Fauci's agency funded dangerous research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology and what role he played in approving and overseeing it.
Committee Chair Rand Paul of Kentucky argues Dr. Fauci did not have the right to plead the Fifth because of his preemptive pardon from former President Biden. The senator intends to send the contempt charge directly to the Department of Justice rather than have it voted on in the full Senate. Salmonella outbreak. That's the other big story today. Our summer of foodborne illness continues. This time it's jalapeno peppers sold at Chipotle and Qdoba restaurants. That's cause for concern. Hundreds are sick across dozens of states, and many are wondering now, what's going on with our food supply?
Every time we look up, there's another recall.
The CDC says the source of this salmonella outbreak is jalapenos grown in Mexico and distributed by a California-based produce provider. Correspondent Maggie Vespa continues our coverage.
The salmonella surge is just the latest food scare in America, with health officials also tracking that cyclospora outbreak linked to tainted lettuce served at Taco Bell, with more than 10,000 confirmed infections and 2 deaths. Taco Bell has since removed the tainted lettuce.
Chipotle and Qdoba have also taken action to make sure their restaurants are safe. They've pulled the peppers in question off the menu. Food safety experts stress the outbreaks of cyclospora and salmonella are not linked. They stress the timing is just horrible coincidence. NBC News medical contributor Dr. John Torres.
These outbreaks happen typically every year. This year happens to be more robust than most. And our distribution system used to be local. Decades ago, it was just local producers. Then it went regional. Now it's national, even internationally. So when something happens, there's an outbreak like these jalapenos, they end up spreading to different states and affecting more people. And so I think until we get our surveillance system under control and more robust, I think we're going to start seeing more of these.
Other news this Thursday afternoon, new developments to report in the war with Iran. There are reports from both the White House and Tehran that a deal on the Strait of Hormuz could be close. This draft resolution would establish rules for how the vital shipping lane is managed. The result would have major impact on what you're paying for gasoline right now. The price at the pump has gone up by more than $1 a gallon since the war started. The president says Iran contacted him last week, pleading for us to call off airstrikes, which the commander-in-chief says would have been bigger than World War II.
I'm not looking to kill people and totally obliterate everything, and that's where we were headed. And they wanted to negotiate, and we're doing that, and it seems to be working out quite well.
Mr. Trump says the second phase of negotiations will address Iran's nuclear capabilities, but getting the strait open for business is priority number one for him. The Trump administration's immigration crackdown saw a record number of deportations during the month of July. 51,000 arrests were made, and that's the largest of any month in the history of the Department of Homeland Security.
What we don't know is who is being targeted. Are these people with final orders of removal? Are these people with criminal convictions? What we do know, however, is that this does come as DHS has strengthened their ties with TSA, collaborating to target and arrest people who have overstayed their visas. It is another example of how the Trump administration is not only arresting people at historic levels, but they're also increasing the number of people that are susceptible to deportation.
That's ABC's Armando Garcia. A narrow narrow win by a far-left candidate in Michigan's U.S. Senate primary has a lot of folks talking today about the future of the Democratic Party. The winner, Dr. Abdul El-Sayed, says the ideological infighting is actually good for the party.
Sometimes intra-family squabbles are the biggest ones, but we all know that when we walk out the house, we stand united. And sometimes we got to have it out about the conversation about who we are and who we want to be.
Political commentator Kaylee McGee-White thinks Al-Sayed's victory will help Republicans flip that seat in the fall.
As a Michigander, I think that this is the best case scenario for Republicans. This was by no means a runaway race, and I think it shows a very deeply divided Democratic demographic that gives Mike Rogers a big opening here. Some polls show that he's already up by about 28 points among independents.
Trump-backed former Michigan Congressman Mike Rogers will take on Abdul El-Sayed in November. El-Sayed's facing criticism for campaigning alongside socialist influencer Hassan Piker, who once said that America deserved 9/11. Brianna Lyman writes for The Federalist, a conservative think tank.
There was a time in America where if somebody was actively campaigning with someone who said America deserved 9/11, that candidate would no longer exist as a candidate, right? They would have been removed from the ticket. But now we have imported so many Muslims that they shut down legitimate criticism of El-Sayed campaigning with a person who says America deserved 9/11, that they call people Islamophobic for pointing it out. That's a real problem.
Democrats need a net gain of 4 seats to wrest control of the Senate from Republicans this year. If the GOP flips Michigan, then the Democrats would need 5. A double standard in the WNBA. Minnesota Lynx head coach Cheryl Reeve seems unbothered by biological men in women's sports, except when it comes to her job.
The narrative that I think that is problematic is to suggest that, number one, that transgender athletes are the biggest problem in women's sports. To this day, we still don't have more women coaching in college basketball than we do men.
That apparent double standard by Cheryl Reeve has women's sports activist Elizabeth Barkohanna up in arms.
The mama bear in me really comes out when she's complaining about job opportunities for the coaches, but doesn't give a little bit of grace to the girls. For the girls, it's okay for those spots to be taken from them, but not for the adult women. That's an inversion of what the adults are supposed to be caring for, the vulnerable in our population, the children.
Cheryl Reeve recently coached a game for the Lynx while wearing a pro-trans t-shirt. The issue of biological boys and girls sports came to a head in the WNBA last month when Indiana Fever star Sophie Cunningham spoke out against it, saying it's common sense to protect female athletes. A popular coffee flavor associated with the fall is just around the corner. Correspondent Rebecca Jarvis has a PSL preview.
Pumpkin spice and everything nice. But is fall coming too soon, even for lovers of the autumnal drink?
I'm still soaking in summer, so I'm not quite ready.
Pumpkin spice is big business for the coffee giants and countless other businesses with pumpkin spice products. One estimate saying that the pumpkin spice market is worth $1.7 billion globally.
Dunkin' will roll out its popular fall flavors August 19th. Starbucks will do the same on August 25th. Still to come on the Noon Report. For a Thursday, comedy takes center stage in Jamestown. Garrity goes on the attack, and not enough doctors in the state of New York.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Williams. We'll head into the weekend with warmth, humidity, and everything from some sunshine to a few scattered showers and thunderstorms. I'll have forecast details up in 10.
All right, Kevin, see you in about 10 minutes. Thank you. Let's check the stories making news where you live all across New York and Pennsylvania. 2 teenagers are dead and a child seriously hurt after a side-by-side crash Wednesday afternoon in Susquehanna County, Pennsylvania. It happened on Butterfield Road, town of New Milford, when a 2025 Can-Am Defender left the road, struck a tree, and rolled onto its side. These vehicles are like souped-up four-wheelers. The 18-year-old driver and a 13-year-old passenger were killed. A third occupant, a 12-year-old girl, was taken to Wilson Memorial Hospital with severe injuries. It's almost time for back to school, and one Pennsylvania school district is getting ready by focusing on school security. An active shooter drill happened Wednesday at the Millersburg area school district in Dauphin County.
We're training for something that can happen every day. We see it happen way too often.
As State Trooper Megan Frazier.
Our job is to get in there and stop the threat. We don't wait on backup. We are going in.
Actors from a local theater group, along with school staff, took part in the drill by portraying gunshot victims. Classes at Millersburg Central begin August 25th. More reaction today to New York's controversial Medical Aid in Dying Act. It allows those with terminal illness to end their lives by taking a lethal dose of drugs. Doctors can opt out on moral or religious grounds, but those who do must transfer the patient to another provider. And that's the subject of a lawsuit by Catholic healthcare providers.
If they want to opt out, New York has said, fine, you can opt out, but you got to find someone else to give it to them. They can't do that either.
Attorney Adele Kind represents Catholic nuns in New York who are opposed to the Medical Aid in Dying Act.
What the sisters are asking for is a true opt-out, the ability to not participate, and the ability for their residents to not have to hear about this.
Jose Hernandez with the New York Association of Independent Living is calling for a delay in the law's implementation.
We're just not prepared. The state didn't provide adequate time to address concerns.
Governor Hochul disputes those who say the law is at odds with her own Catholic faith.
I'm proud that I gave people the choice when life gets really hard, that they don't have to prolong a death that's inevitable.
New Yorkers 18 and over with 6 months or less to live can now request lethal medication. 2 physicians must sign off on that request. There's also a 5-day wait period, and the patient must undergo a mental health evaluation. Those wishing to end their lives must make that request verbally and in writing, and the option is restricted to New York State residents. Pennsylvania Republican gubernatorial candidate Stacey Garrity has just received the endorsement of President Trump, and her opponent in the fall election is glad she did. Incumbent Democrat Josh Shapiro out with a new political attack ad linking Garrity to the commander-in-chief.
Stacey Garrity is all MAGA all the time.
Garrity telling ABC 27.
Polls are tightening, and he's obviously seeing the same thing that I'm seeing because this is the first time he mentioned my name.
Are you flattered by that?
I am.
She blames the governor, not the president, for the high cost of gasoline in the Keystone State.
We are the Saudi Arabia of natural gas, and we're basically squandering our blessings.
Garrity is attempting to pierce Shapiro's veil of invincibility with new attack ads of her own. Political consultant John Brabender created them.
You could call them scandals, you could call them character issues, you could call them corruption, whatever you want, that really have never been, in our opinion, fully investigated.
Shapiro is under fire for, among other things, his handling of sexual harassment claims against a former staffer. Polls show the Democrat, however, with a double-digit lead over Garrity with 3 months to go before Election Day. The U.S. Justice Department has announced the results of Operation Clean Sweep in Onondaga County, New York. Over a dozen suspects in the Syracuse area taken into custody on drug and weapons charges. Authorities say they were distributing enough drugs to kill about 180,000 people. The Onondaga County DA says these cases were handled in federal court because under New York's bail reform law, those who were arrested would have been released without bail. A new report by the University of Albany shows New York does not have enough primary care physicians, especially in rural regions. That's left 5 million upstate with fewer options and longer wait times at the hospital.
Retirement's an issue. Physicians are getting older, and they're retiring, and we're not able to replace them.
That's study author Dr. Robert Martiniano. He tells Spectrum News healthcare facilities are short by about 1,000 doctors right now. Family physician Dr. Marissa Fusello says the backlog of patients is, in a word, overwhelming.
I really have difficulty taking
enough time with patients, getting to know them, making sure that they were educated on their diagnosis.
Both New York and Pennsylvania rank in the top 10 nationwide when it comes to states with the longest wait times at the hospital. It's over 3 hours on average in both New York and PA. New York Democrats are calling on the Trump administration to reverse course on recent cuts to federal grants that fund teen pregnancy prevention programs. The nation's health secretary, Robert Kennedy Jr., would rather that money be spent on abstinence education. The federal government is focusing on programs that do not promote sexual activity in minors. The overall teen pregnancy rate in New York has dropped from where it was 2 decades ago. A recent ruling on ICE activity in New York is drawing mixed reviews by the state's congressional delegation. Democrat Pat Ryan does not like that decision by a U.S. District Court judge, which allows immigration officials to wear masks while making arrests.
Safety is about transparency and trust. And when you have federal law enforcement who are coming from out of the area that nobody knows, it's really important to be able to have accountability, to know who they are. If there's a problem, who do we go to as a community? So I think this legislation to make law enforcement officers just be identifiable, to be able to see their face, to have a badge number, is needed and is widely popular.
Republican Congressman Nick Langworthy tells Spectrum News masks are meant to protect those who are enforcing immigration law.
These people are being doxxed. They're being tracked down. There's a organized network of people trying to interfere with police work. And I think it's very important for them to be able to conceal identity. I have long said that I think agents should all have body cameras. I think that's a no-brainer. They can keep everyone honest. But the identities of these officers, their safety becomes a risk. We have to protect the men and women in uniform.
While striking down the mask ban, the judge did uphold a state law that prohibits local police from cooperating with ICE. Law enforcement agencies have until August 25th to comply. Several sheriffs and county executives have already stated they will not abide by this law. There are lawsuits expected. Days after announcing a bipartisan bill to combat the spotted lanternfly, Pennsylvania Senators Dave McCormick and John Fetterman are teaming up again. They're shifting their focus now to another issue, the opioid and fentanyl crisis. Their bill would help communities recruit, train, and strengthen the workforce that's needed to support addiction prevention, treatment, and recovery. Both Senators Fetterman and McCormick say the legislation's intended to address the impact that substance abuse disorder has on the workforce. The National Comedy Center in Jamestown, New York, is bracing for 15,000 out-of-towners this weekend. It's the 35th annual Lucille Ball Comedy Festival.
Comedy is such, it's an art form, but it's such an important part of our lives. I mean, it's a release valve. It's a way to connect with family members and friends.
That's National Comedy Center spokesman Gary Hahn. He says comedian Jerry Seinfeld will be headlining this year's festival.
What we do here is celebrate all kinds of comedy, and we love to bring not only legends of comedy like Jerry Seinfeld, but newer comedians who you may not have heard of yet, but you're going to fall in love with if you see their shows throughout the festival.
The festival this year kicks off today, which, by the way, is Lucille Ball's birthday. How about that? She was born in 1911 in the Jamestown suburb of Celeron and would have been 115 if she were still alive today. Still to come on the Noon Report for Thursday, Fauci contempt vote, foodborne illnesses, and why assisted suicide is a bad idea.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. Well, former President Richard Nixon is, quote-unquote, having a moment. More than half a century after the 37th president of the U.S., the only one to resign from office, left office in disgrace, a new vibe is emerging around his persona, especially amongst younger Americans. The influx of Nixon swag, Nixon memes, Nixon-themed TikTok videos is now known as Nixon Maxing. Now, why a Nixon renaissance? Why now? According to the Wall Street Journal, Nixon's being recast as a forerunner of America First by a new generation of conservatives A combative president, loathed by the press and besieged by investigators, who was brought down by the same establishment they believe targeted President Trump, end quote. For example, Vice President J.D. Vance recently called the redeeming of Nixon's legacy, quote unquote, deserved. He then added, if Watergate happened tomorrow, it would be like a 12-hour news story. The idea that it would have taken down a president is crazy. Nixon's renaissance is partly due to new scholarship, new books, new documentaries that all attempt, as the late Paul Harvey would often put it, to tell the rest of the story, namely that Nixon wasn't quite as bad as he's been portrayed and that there was no fair trial for his co-conspirators. The Wall Street Journal is hopeful that Nixon maxing will serve as a gateway drug to learning more Nixon history. But Christians can be hopeful that it'll be a gateway to the greatest story ever told. Because among the host of colorful characters, movie-like events, and confusing puzzles surrounding Nixon's history is the story of a life transformed by the work of Jesus Christ. Chuck Colson served as special counsel for President Nixon from 1969 until his resignation in 1973. Slate magazine described Colson as, quote-unquote, the evil genius of an evil administration. And he was best known as Nixon's hatchet man, who was, as Colson once described himself, deeply valuable to the president because he was ruthless in getting things done. Colson became embroiled in the Watergate scandal and was indicted in 1974 for conspiracy to cover up the Watergate burglaries and for obstruction of justice. He spent 7 months in federal prison after pleading guilty to a different charge. Though he had firmly committed during his public service to never being compromised, Chuck Colson self-admittedly became blind to his own ethical concessions. As he would often explain later, quote, human beings have the infinite capacity for self-rationalization, and that's exactly what I did. It was after his resignation from the White House, but before going to prison, that Colson encountered Jesus Christ. Copy of C.S. Lewis's Mere Christianity, the compelling witness of a recent convert, and a crisis of meaning that he was going through all led Colson to give his life to Christ. His 1974 memoir, Born Again, told the story of the redemption that Chuck found in Jesus Christ and how the lowest moment of his life became, in the end, the pivot to an incredible life of serving others and advancing the gospel. Colson would go on to found Prison Fellowship Ministries and, of course, the Colson Center for Christian Worldview. He would be an advocate for many other Christian causes, serving as a convictional voice for truth in the public square. The many suggestions that haunted his life and even his death, that his conversion was in fact inauthentic, was repudiated by decades of a life that were lived redeemed, that were lived in a way transformed by the work of Christ. So whatever it is that's really driving the current Nixon-maxing trend, Christians should take the opportunity to point the interested to the life of Chuck Colson, because his life points ultimately to the life, death, resurrection, and renewal of Jesus Christ. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet with Breakpoint.
Thank you, John. Outside next, it's weather where you live with meteorologist Kevin Williams.
Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast for this afternoon. Warm and humid with clouds, intervals of sunshine. Watch for a couple of scattered showers and thunderstorms into the evening hours. High temperatures in the 80s. Overnight, tonight, partly cloudy with patchy fog. Low temperatures 60s to near 70. Tomorrow and Saturday, variably cloudy, warm and humid. A few scattered showers and thunderstorms and high temperatures in the 80s. Sunday looks to be the nicer weekend day. Mostly dry and partly sunny.
All right, Kevin, thank you. This is the Noon Report on Family Life. I'm your host, Bob Price, and here's what's going on. Thursday, the 6th of August, the Senate Homeland Security Committee voted this morning to hold pandemic point man Dr. Anthony Fauci in contempt of Congress for refusing to answer questions about COVID-19. Committee Chair Dr. Rand Paul says Dr. Fauci does not have the right to plead the Fifth because of his preemptive pardon from former President Biden.
I mean, why would you need the Fifth Amendment if all you have to do is come before a committee and not lie?
Paul plans to refer the contempt charge directly to the Department of Justice rather than have it voted on in the full Senate. The COVID czar denies allegations of a COVID cover-up. Talks continue to try and get the Strait of Hormuz open for business. President Trump at a GOP rally last night.
I'd rather make a deal because I don't want to kill people. I do not want to kill people.
Reports do indicate that progress in talks between Iran and Oman aimed at opening the strait, led in part by Gulf allies urging the president not to strike.
That's Fox's Trey Yingst. The president says Iran's nuclear capabilities will be settled at a later date, after the strait is back in business. At least 350 people in 27 states have been sickened by a salmonella outbreak after eating tainted jalapenos at Chipotle and Qdoba restaurants. Those Mexican fast food chains have pulled the peppers in question from their stores. They were produced in Mexico and distributed by a company in California. The foodborne illness comes as a cyclospora outbreak linked to shredded lettuce continues. The CDC's investigating over 10,000 sicknesses in 47 states. You're listening to the Noon Report for Thursday on Family Life.
This is Faith Under Fire. We take you straight to the front lines of religious battlegrounds. I'm your host, Sarah Harnish. With me today, Alliance Defending Freedom's Chelsea Yeoman. New York marked a major milestone yesterday. Assisted suicide is now legal in the Empire State, and that means patients with less than 6 months to live may request lethal drugs from their physician under the Medical Aid in Dying Act. This is the kind of stuff that you fight against every single day at ADF. Chelsea, tell me your thoughts.
New York has unfortunately become the 13th state, not including the District of Columbia, who have all legalized assisted suicide. And it's really a devastating development. We know that people who are receiving those diagnoses need help and palliative care and compassion and kindness, not killing.
There were a number of cases filed against it. Disability Rights Group, their case was dismissed last week. The Catholic Order of Nuns filed a federal lawsuit. That case handled by the Becket Fund. Can you tell me some more about that case?
Yes, well, this is a really important case to challenge the New York law because many of these types of laws are trying to force all religious entities to become participants in activity that is against their religious views and conscience. And it starts with these Catholic entities all filed suit saying, we do not want to participate in assisted killing because we have religious beliefs that all humans are made in the image of the living God. That means that humanity is worthy of protection from life at conception to natural death. And so they filed suit on July 17th, and then the law was halted in a temporary restraining order this week. And so we're grateful to see that there's a little bit of protection here, at least in the interim for now, as this case makes its way through the courts.
It is a relief that that temporary restraining order to protect the nuns was granted. What happens next?
Well, right now, the Attorney General of New York, she will have 30 days to respond. And so there's going to be, of course, a back and forth, as all cases have. But in the interim, these sisters are protected. The religious viewpoints are protected. And that also has a ripple effect across the state. We need to be praying as this law goes into effect that the state of New York quit making a culture of death the law of the land.
What's interesting is that there was nothing written into this law to protect the nuns, and the person that signed off on it, Kathy Hochul, is Catholic.
This is an unfortunate trend in spite of the governor's faith or what she espouses to. We are not seeing blue states carve out exemptions for our First Amendment rights, our religious liberty rights. That has gone by the wayside, and that's been a consistent trend wholesale. And that's why we have so many of these legal battles at ADF and Alliance Defending Freedom, our friends and allies at Becket. We're having to carve out religious exemptions for us to be able to walk outside of our homes, work, serve, live in accordance with our faith, and because the laws are not encompassing those protections as they should. And so we're here to fight that every step of the way.
Where do you go with a law like this? Once something of this magnitude passes, is the only way to fight it through the judicial branch, case by case?
It is, but once we win these cases, which we are seeing a very strong Supreme Court on our First Amendment rights, the precedences are then established. I do think a cautionary tale we should all pay attention to is the case in Canada, because in 2016, Canada passed the Medical Assistance in Dying Act, the MAID Act, And what we saw was an incredible increase in assisted suicide. The rate, it now accounts for 5% of all deaths in Canada. 5% are assisted suicide. In a country like Canada, they allow for assisted suicide for any reason whatsoever, not just in the case of New York, which is a terminal illness. They allow it for all sorts of cases. And so what you have is a system that's now designed to pressure citizens into suicide. They're saying their soldiers who struggle with PTSD are getting pressure to just kill themselves. And what you have is a full culture of death. And that's what we're looking at when we see 13 states starting to move in the United States in this direction. We need to pay attention to other nations who have similarly gone this direction and what it's resulted in. And it is a mass culture of death where some people are viewed as worthy of life and protection and others are not. And a great example of that is in Canada. Among those who choose assisted suicide who are not terminally ill, 30% are below the poverty rate. You're getting into eugenics when you start to see statistics like that come out, and we're here to fight that type of parsing between the human soul and spirit in society as much as possible.
This has been billed as compassionate care for those in pain at the end of their life. And there's a loud argument that religious freedom has no voice at the table. Assisted suicide advocate Jeff Sugarman spoke to Spectrum News.
We don't believe that the religious views of some should be able to stop other people from using a law if they so desire.
If we pull religious freedom out of the equation, what is the strongest argument against assisted suicide?
The strongest argument against assisted suicide is that it is homicide, which is unlawful in the United States of America. No human should be murdered under the law. Our right to life is paramount to all of the other rights existing. No one person should be allowed to end the life of another human. We're looking at a true slippery slope in society where we will begin to measure whose lives are worthy of continuing or not when they are ill. And we've seen those systems. You can look at Canada's. I don't think that any one human has a right to look at another human and say whether they are or are not worthy of life.
Chelsea Yeoman with Alliance Defending Freedom. You can learn more at adflegal.org.
All right, thank you for that, Sarah. The name of the program, Faith Under Fire, it comes your way every Thursday during the Noon Report or online anytime at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and our website, familylife.org. Finally, at noon for a Thursday, it is hot and humid out there today, so if you're looking for the perfect beverage to cool off, well, listen to this from Bree Tennis.
Today is National Root Beer Float Day, originally called a black cow when it was invented in 1893. Simple to make, drop a scoop of vanilla ice cream into a glass and pour root beer over the top. What happens next is pure science. The froth that forms is a process called nucleation. That's when air pockets in the ice cream give the carbon dioxide in the root beer a place to form bubbles. So it's fun, refreshing, and educational. I'm Bree Tennis.
As long as it's educational. Thank you, Bree. Appreciate that. And that's our world, the world we live in. Thursday, the 6th day of August. I'm Bob Price. Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.